I joined Solidaridad to help implement a World Bank program. We call it the Ghana Dedicated Grant Mechanism program. And that program ended 2022. That was basically to look at how we can bring some good understanding to climate change, to help our farmers understand exactly what is happening around them, and beyond the understanding of what is happening around them, to be able to adapt so that climate change does not really affect them. And I was shortly after invited again to support the communication work. So I was the head of comms for Solidaridad West Africa for about 4 years. And then this opportunity came and I jumped on that. So that's a little about me.
And we're lucky to have you then. Can you proceed?
Right. So basically, I just want to share some perspectives with you on one, the general food and agric sector in Ghana. Just to give ourselves a certain picture of some realities on the ground, some attempts that governments have endeavored to make in order to address some of the challenges and possibly draw attention to some potential opportunities for investment on the part of those who may be interested in investing in food and agriculture. So in terms of the challenges facing agriculture, I did agri science, I think, far back in 1996, 97. And if I look at the literature today in terms of the challenges facing agriculture in Ghana, I see that what I was taught many years ago hasn't changed. If you go into literature today, Tekla is practically the same. I do not see any single mention of agri challenges in Ghana today that is different from what I know many years ago. And it seems that I can take the challenge that unless something extraordinary or drastic is done, giving ourselves another 20 years, we may still be recounting these same issues as challenges. So if you were exposed to agri science sometime, you may have heard that Ghana's agriculture is faced with soil infertility issue, maybe soil erosion, disease and pest incidents, policies that are inconsistent and incoherent, lack of investment, lack of access to finance, and things like that. Unfortunately, these challenges remain. And there have been a number of programs over the years by successive governments to address some of these. And let me quickly run you through, let me see if I can. I didn't intend to share my screen, but let me see. I got this. Let me share my my screen. Perhaps it may be useful to you. I don't know if I have what it takes to share my screen.
Yes, you can.
Do I have the privilege? Yeah, I do. Okay, thank you. Let me see. And then I have this. Sorry. A bit disorganized. Like I said, I didn't expect to. But it's here somewhere here. Yeah, so if you can see my screen. So somewhere in the, I'll focus a bit more on what looks a bit recent. So, and this is actually drawn from an FAO document. So if we look at 1995, Ghana developed what we call the Ghana Vision 2020. This may resonate a lot more with people who were familiar with the Rawlings regime, because it's something that the former president trumpeted a lot. And then under what we call the Ghana Shared Growth and Development Agenda, we developed a number of programs from 2010 to about 2013. And around that time, we had what we call the Ghana Agricultural Insurance Program. It has been operating since 2013. We then paid attention to post-harvest handling of food. And so we had the National Buffer Stock Company that was put in place in 2010. And then to aggregate farmlands and make them more accessible to young people to support agriculture, what was known as a block farming program also came into being, and that was in 2009. And you may have also heard of the fertilizer subsidy program, which has been in operation since 2008, and it is fraught with all its challenges. Mechanization has been a key challenge, and really it still is. And so there has been an attempt since 2007 to have an agricultural mechanization service enterprise center program. And that has been at the producer side of things to help improve the production of primary commodities. And then around trade and market, there has also been some attempt to make sure that there is some free pass or some reasonable arrangement in place to ensure that the trading and marketing of our great products is well facilitated. And so in 2008, Ghana had this economic partnership agreement with the EU. And I'm sure you may have also heard a lot of commentary on that, the pros and cons of that agreement, all the limitations it has had. And then there has been some attempt to introduce some tariffs on the some commodities like rice, wheat, yellow maize, and vegetables, so that we can discourage the import of some of these. Whether this has been effective, well, the reality stays today for all of us to consume. So these are some of the notable programs that government upon government have actually put in place. And lately, you may have also heard of the rice imports ban, which has been accentuated, particularly with the knowledge that Ghana has what it takes to be able to produce rice. So programs upon programs have come. And now, if you visit the website of the of MOFA, you can certainly hear about the Ghana Agricultural Sector Investment Program. Another one, Modernizing Agric in Ghana program. I hope these programs don't end up overwhelming you. And note this, Savannah Investment Program and Savannah Agricultural Value Chain Development Program. I'm sure already these are beginning to form a certain pattern of reality in your mind. Well, lately we have the Planting for Food and Jobs. The first phase of it ended, I think, sometime last year. And this year, government has announced phase 2 of the Planting for Food and Jobs. And the focus now is on working with governments to, traditional authorities to make land available for young people to be able to invest and to enter into agriculture. So if you followed the listing of the programs that had just gone by, it seems that some appear a bit repetitive in scope, in content, and they appear a bit incoherent. You are not sure exactly what lessons we may have learned from previous programs and how that is informing the current one. And again, there remains a challenge of how individuals also feel the challenge, the programs. What that means is that while government may perhaps be busily working on developing programs, plans, policies, and what have you, the reality is that it may probably not be catching up with those who need to experience the program, i.e. the farmers themselves. And that is why today, if you spoke to any farmer, the very issues that I mentioned in terms of challenges facing agriculture, they would also likely mention that to you. So Tekla, essentially, that has been some of the programs that the government of Ghana over the years have implemented. But also there's the program we call FASDEP, the Food and Agriculture Sector Development Program, that has also seen phase 1 and a phase 2, with the phase 2 starting, I think, somewhere in 2012 or so. And as far as I know, FASDEP policy may have ended, and we are waiting for a successive policy so that we'll know exactly what the Ghana Food and Agriculture Policy, the current one, is. So that is by way of the situation of the Ghana Food and Agriculture Program and Policy as it may be tackled. But I can also proceed and mention specific areas where I think we may need to pay some particular attention to. I would like to say that soil, for instance, is key. It's very, very critical. I mean, you cannot talk about food production, in fact, agriculture generally, without talking about soil. And many people believe that soil is actually agriculture. Of course, there have been some recent attempts by some innovators to explore the use of water to serve as a growing medium. And so that has given rise to aquaponics and hydroponics and so on and so forth, which are all fine. But that all these innovations are arising because of some challenges with soil that has been experienced. Otherwise, soil is the natural medium for growing food crops. And when you lift a teaspoonful of soil, to surprise you to know that it contains thousands of organisms, okay? And that would include soil biota, what we call biota, which will be what others call fauna and flora. So there are a lot of living organisms in the soil. Some of the popular ones we know include earthworm. Maybe let me just stay there with the earthworm. And these organisms that operate within the soil help the soil to have the proper release of nutrients and be able to feed roots with the necessary nutrients, and that also absorbs the nutrients and water and supply it to the rest of the parts of a plant. So soil is a key thing that Ghana, we have not paid attention to. We possibly have not put in place enough arrangements to protect soil. Thankfully, now there is a conversation around climate smart agriculture, which essentially involves the integration of some cover crops so that soils could be protected from the direct exposure to the sun. But traditionally, farming in Ghana has been one that makes soil have a lot more impact from the sun. You may know that our farmers would normally prepare the soil by even burning. An act of burning means that the living organisms in the soil actually get impacted. Some die. Those who can only survive at the soil surface would actually experience the impact of the heat, and they will certainly die. And over time, the soil becomes pan, becomes like cake, a very hard cake. And that means aeration, the ability of air to pass through that soil and feed the roots becomes a bit more limited. So we need an arrangement in place to be able to protect soil and to continuously enhance the quality of soil so that it can supply the relevant water and nutrients to the roots of a plant. Again, soil aside, and by the way, talking about soil, we know soil is also on land. And yet the management of land for agriculture has been very problematic. It seems we don't have a clear plan as a country to reserve some lands for agricultural purpose. I don't know if it is a problem that exists with the current land tenure system we operate in Ghana, where about 70% or so of land is in the hands of traditional authorities. And they are not necessarily enjoined to have land plans. And so depending on the temperature of the traditional authority, they may decide that, well, I want to develop this land for housing purpose. And often agriculture does not receive the necessary attention. No wonder, even under the Planting for Food and Jobs Phase 2, government has to practically beg traditional authorities for land to be made available to support the program. So the entire land tenure arrangement may not necessarily enjoin our traditional authorities to, of necessity, release land for agricultural development purposes, except when they decide and they are moved by the spirit to actually release land for agricultural purposes. So it's like whoever is able to pay more to the traditional authority gets access to the land. No wonder now Ghana is grappling with illegal small-scale mining, where lands are destroyed. And as long as the traditional authority is able to release land to the operators, we know that the land actually is destroyed as wanton as it can be. But there's no safeguard measures in place to first even protect the resource and to make sure that there's compliance to that. So we need to do something about a land tenure system. Otherwise, many years to come, Ghana would not be able to have productive land to actually grow our own food. Again, the farmer. Many of our farmers, we have said 60% of our population are into agricultural development. Of course, that would include farming itself, trade, marketing, and all of that. But we can say that at least 40% of our population are into primary commodity production. And yet, these only exist around the commodity because they have what we call sentimental attachment to that. For some, farming has been passed on to them from years. And so that's all they have known. So if they are not exposed to other opportunities, then they stay in farming because they don't have, competitive opportunities. So they remain in farming. And they get stuck to very limited land sizes, which also inhibit a farmer's ability to even develop the land and to get more from that. So we are dealing with many fragmented lands. So even the land that is available for the cultivation of food, it is still fragmented. It is spread over many farmers. And that means that with the limited land size, it is difficult to apply some of the practices and investments that would help improve yield and at the same time ensure sustainability. So that has been a problem. As against the situation in some advanced jurisdiction, like let's say in the Netherlands, I like using that example, where you have just about 5% of the entire population of about 30 million that are feeding the whole country. And not just the country, Netherlands is also able to export food to other European countries and even to countries like Ghana. And yet they do this with only 5% of the population. Why? Because there is a clear policy in place to aggregate land and give the land to some limited farmers who have the know-how and the capacity to develop the land. And government also has some incentive in place to support agricultural development with machinery, with inputs and things like that. And that has helped improve the agricultural fortunes of advanced jurisdiction. Can we do something similar in Ghana? Well, that may be a tall order, but that should be the future that we should be heading toward. Otherwise, a fragmented land situation in Ghana would really make development and expansion very difficult. We also look at capacity building, where even for those who have the time, energy, resources to be able to enter into agriculture, the know-how is not necessarily catching up with all of them as much as it will be desired. We still have a large segment of our farmers that are in need of extension services all the time. Of course, for some of our farmers, we can say that access to information is hampered by their inability to access literacy, even to access some of the information available on the digital highway, on internet and things like that. So we still have a huge capacity gap when it comes to those who even want to enter into agriculture. So there is a need for a lot more capacity building. I must say that with the advent of NGOs in agriculture, a lot has been done, but there is still significant gap that exists to be filled. Again, youth is a huge asset that remains untapped. And that is especially important in the face of our aging farmer population. On average, we have cocoa farmers in general with an average age of, I think, 50, 54, 55. Now, what that means is that succession becomes a problem. In other jurisdictions, it is around the 30s and early 40s. So succession becomes a problem. But can you blame the youth? When they continue to see their parents in dire poverty, they've been farming for years, and yet they are unable to have the necessary resources. They can't even make a living income out of the farming. The prices they receive, for instance, if he's a cocoa farmer, is dictated by some other source. Is either you take it or leave it. And so the farmers are always at the mercy of price dictators. Can you blame them if their children say that they do not want to enter into agriculture? But we need a policy. We need a deliberate arrangement. Of course, some programs, as I've already mentioned, some attempts have been made, but obviously they have not been effective. And we need one that is very deliberate and that is facilitated by government with huge investment, with a lot of incentive for young people, some of whom, unfortunately, you would see in the afternoon playing games, and now others are into serious betting. Some even do it to occupy their time. All these are huge resources available to help Ghana to be able to develop food and agriculture sector. But we need to tap into that. Investment has also been quite limited. Individuals and some entities have made some attempt to invest in agriculture. We have seen individuals like John DeMello who have also tasted agriculture and are now on social media encouraging others to go into that. But not every potential investor may be that fortunate, because you go into it and even land becomes a problem. And so people have resources they want to go into agriculture, but it is not well targeted for that investment to be able to be received into the sector. And so people are still not sure whether the risk involved in agriculture is something they should venture into. So a lot more information has to be shared with the public so that they can see the business case of investing in agriculture for them to be able to do so. We still have a lot of issues that faces us when it comes to access to finance. The banks will say that agri financing is risky. They ask for collateral from farmers. Farmers certainly cannot get. And so they would rather prefer to invest the money in schemes such as they suffered when the government decided to have this program, financial program coming on board. We know how many banks have suffered. Some banks are now saying that it would have been more productive to invest that resources in agriculture with all the risk. Unfortunately, that perception is still there. And thankfully, Solidaridad, my organization, and some other organizations have worked and demonstrated that we can actually help to de-risk farmers so that they can receive access to finance from financial service providers. And that knowledge, know-how is the technology is still a key challenge. And we have not been able to tap or harness the full potential of technology to improve. Elsewhere, people do serious irrigation using drones. Ghana Irrigation Establishment and Development itself still has a lot of teething challenges, let alone to talk about the deployment of drones and things like that. Again, consumer awareness of the nutrition and the value of some food that are grown in our country is limited. So that also accounts for the reason why, many farmers produce, and yet the uptake of what they produce becomes limited. If there is a huge demand from the consuming public for specific food crops, because they have become aware of the nutritional value and some other useful information regarding those crops as it relates even to health, then that would increase their appetite for the uptake, and that also encourage the farmer to also produce more. So we have not been able to take advantage, work with nutritionists to really promote the value of some food crops and even homegrown crops as against those that are imported. So we have become so stuck to import. Everything that is imported, we think it is a good thing. So we need to step up awareness and campaigns around the value of homegrown produce. Sustainable market is something that we cannot stop talking about. Market is what will drive agri development. So to the extent that to date, in spite of attempts to handle post-harvest loss, to manage post-harvest loss, we still have post-harvest loss as a key challenge. It tells us that access to, sustainable market is still problematic. People think that, and it is true, at least based on the little study we have done, that there is an imbalance between the production of crops and the off-taking arrangement, where off-takers just go and offer any price to the farmer, irrespective of the investment volumes that have been made by the farmer. The last 2 points I would also like to talk about, and maybe pause and see if some of you have some questions to ask. Would also have to do with some emerging global measures to manage the exports, so to them imports of some international commodities. Within the cocoa arena, there is a talk of the EU mandatory due diligence framework that is going to take effect from 31st December 2024. And that, among other things, has been driven largely by consumer demands. Consumers in the European Union, because of the realization that some of the production of our commodities have been fraught with unsustainable practices, some even leading to forest degradation and farmers not receiving the fair price they deserve, and the fact that there are some human rights abuses in the production of some of these raw commodities. The EU consumers are demanding from their government that they have to work hard to make sure that some of these commodities that are imported to their countries are actually from sustainably managed sources, and that there should be some due diligence that is implemented to make sure that these products or produce are coming from well-managed lands and sources. So what that means is that as a country, because we are exporting some of these commodities, we have to begin to be aware of some of the arrangements that are coming, so that we can prepare ourselves to be compliant. Of course, I'm not too much fan of export, even though it may have some foreign exchange value. But I think that the final issue I would like to talk about would be the need for us to do value addition locally, so that even if we have to export, we are able to get a lot more resources from that. Otherwise, if we're able to match the production of these produce with consumption, because we have created proper awareness, then it may get to a point where even the need for export will be limited. However, farmers ought to receive a fair share of the volumes of the trade of the produce. They should be compensated appropriately. Otherwise, the motivation to remain in agriculture will reduce. And what that means is that our dependence on imported food will increase. So let me pause here. Perhaps you may have some questions to ask, so that I will take them. And I know there are some other experts who have joined. So if others also have some other contributions that could also be useful, based on their exposure to the information base. So I'll pause here, Tekla, and let you moderate the rest of the session.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We've heard everything you've said. And interesting, I think for us as lawyers, the part that we think we should be a point of concern is this traceability or this due diligence from the EU, because international laws do apply locally. And if we are going to enter into business in Ghana, in agribusiness, where we expect our produce to go beyond our borders, then we need to understand that there are international laws which will apply, such as this due diligence or traceability. And we need to make sure that we are engaging in sustainable practices so that our commodities, our produce will qualify for European market sales. So I think we may have to jot that down and find out all that the international market with the EU is requiring from farmers and stakeholders in agribusiness in Ghana. And if we intend to make use of their markets, how we can prepare, which sustainable methods we need to adopt, and then for our qualification in the market. That said, we will give a chance to those who are online or those who want to speak. You can put up your hand. I already have some questions in our WhatsApp, so I'm going to read those for the response. But if you can put up your hand, we'll also call you and then you give your answers. I'm going to go straight to the first question. So the first question I received says, what are the challenges we need to understand for the future as farmers in Ghana?
Okay. Okay, so I've noted that down. Do you want me to respond to that directly?
Yes, please.
Okay. Right. So that's a beautiful question. So for Ghana, as I indicated in my opening remarks, the challenges that were there about 20 years ago are still there. So unless something deliberate, structurally different from what we've done is done, giving ourselves the next 10, 20 years, the same challenges will remain. Unfortunately, there may not be any good news for us. But then it gets to a point that we are even unable to produce locally. And so what that means is that we'll now have to depend heavily on exports. And if there is something to be learned from the EU due diligence, mandatory due diligence framework, when you have foreign entities setting the pace and dictating to you the matters that relate to your consumption, you are doomed. They dictate to you what you can buy from them and what you cannot buy from them. The interruption in the supply chain by the Russian-Ukraine war has taught us a great lesson, that even fertilizers we need locally has been affected to the extent that for 2 years, I think until some early this year or so, farmers really struggle to have access to fertilizer. So that is what really happens to you today and the future if your production systems and everything that goes with it are dictated by foreign entities. So we need to take our own destiny into our own hands and get our acts right, have the right policy framework in place, have very responsive programs in place so that we can feed ourselves. The expectation is that Africa should be able to feed the world. That can only happen when we're able to feed ourselves. And unfortunately for us as a test, there is no clear evidence that we are prepared to feed the world, let alone, feed ourselves, let alone to feed the world. So talking about future, it can be bright if we act now, but it can be very gloomy if we do business as usual. That is a harsh reality. Unfortunately, I wouldn't have any good news better than that.
Don't worry. So I believe most of us here are ready for revolutionizing our agribusiness sector in Ghana for our benefits and for the international market. So very soon the conversation will change. Mr.
But
George
let
Aputia,
me be quick to add that we have everything by way of resource that can support the revolutionization of agriculture. So there have been some attempts. We remember our own Kofi Annan talking about green revolution for Africa. I know AGRA, for instance, has taken that up and is working a lot. But if you travel the length and breadth of the country, you see that we still have a long way to go, in spite of all the fine effort and attempts that have been made.
Thank you. Let's work hard, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Kweti, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much,
Right.
Mr. Bossman. And I know there are other aspects on the platform listening, but then being a farmer recently, I have realized that we lack a regulatory framework. And the think tanks around this idea of revolutionizing our agri sector or agribusiness have to rethink the direction we go in without any legal framework to guide both government policies and the individual who wants to get into this eco space. Becoming a farmer or agribusiness entrepreneur, we all know it's just like any other business. It's a closed system. Working the soil, getting seeds, getting them to grow very well, taking care of the products, the produce for the market, packaging them or storing them, adding value. All of this is supply chain management. And you need the right framework to follow through to the end. A farmer with the limited resources will only want to get the product onto the market. Another market should be available to take it on. But do we have that system there? We have to talk into something that is workable, because we are every now and then exploited, especially when we want to talk about the government. Quite recently, I was part of a shortlisted number of entrepreneurs or youngsters who wants to go into agri by the government. These very policies that they have been talking about. The point is, who follows up on the success stories or lessons learned of these policies? How do we get a government to account for the millions of dollars of revenue that have to be paid back to these loans that he's taking? I mean, come to think of it, nobody seems to be aware of how we are affected. Data of we the youth are collected to support the claim for these kind of monies that comes into the country to benefit who? Who actually benefits is the youth that, I mean, contributes to the claim for this kind of funds benefiting actually as supposed to be. Are we really benefiting? That it's a very big question we all have to be answering, because at the end of the day, I'm very sure there will be a government who will be taxing the agri sector to be paying this kind of monies. If not so, the taxpayer, one way or the other, in our other businesses will have to pay. And we are paying it with our natural resources, but there will be depletion. At the end of the day, what about if we don't have natural resources? Are we going to go into a pleading for a cancellation of debt again? We have to be very, very optimistic about this. Not just the soil. We are doing our best. Our fathers have done theirs. Most of us are being inspired to go into agriculture. But the point is that when we take investment from even friends, some friends want to catapult the proposal figures that we've put in there, not realizing the realities that we go through. I mean, the hardship we go through to really turn what we have put on paper into reality. You have people investing into a concept, And then they don't want to be part of it. They just want to fold their arms and then come chasing after you and say, hey, you said you're going to produce this at the end of the day. They don't want to be part of mitigating the problems that you actually encountered. All they want to do is give me back my money. You said you're going to get this. We don't have a regulatory framework, nothing. So at the end of the day, you are being changed as if you went to borrow the money. An investor comes in as a partner, but he folds his arm doing nothing. Who actually looks into this? Both the government side and the individuals interacting. Nothing. We just talk about agric, but we don't have anything to really guide us. So thank you very much. If I can get contributions to that effect, I'll be very glad.
Mr. Akpotia, I don't have anything to add to that. I think these are realities that exist. And in my opening remarks, I even touched on some of these. The inconsistencies and the lack of linkages between programs and policies. One program is finishing, another one comes. We are not sure what lessons would have learned from one, even into the other. That is still a problem. So I think that what you said is spot on. If we had a clear framework, even for agric financing, then some of these issues would have been taken care of. Okay, so it seems that for some who want to invest their monies in agric, because of the risk, they want to be sure that they get their monies back. Not everyone has what it takes to, some have the resources, like I said, but they don't have what it takes to go into the production itself. Those ones will tell you, you said I should give you my money for 18 months. It's 18 months, I need the money back with the interest. They wouldn't care why you have not been able to raise the money. So maybe that's where Tekla and her colleagues can also help us in terms of, proper agreements and some legal support for such kind of relationship, so that the farmer is protected, the investor is also protected as far as their investments are concerned.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are here to help. And also, luckily, we have government officials online today. So we know very well they are listening. And we are hoping that we get to the point that this will not just be a discussion, but we are actually seeing implementation on ground. We are seeing policies which are actually benefiting farmers and the country as a whole. For want of time, I'm going to quickly read the other questions. It's actually directly to you, so I can't leave them out.
Yeah.
Be happy if you could respond to this. And then for all of those who have sent to the WhatsApp, please, we'll get the responses and share them with you. If you want the recording or anything, to kindly send us a WhatsApp or a message on our WhatsApp line, we would reach out to you with those as well. So, question. Does Solidarity provide financing, whether debt or equity? If not, do you know any entities, local or international, open to finance large-scale commercial farming? Also, do you know any agencies, local or international, interested in financing green, climate-friendly businesses? Or anything, example, open to investing in solar vehicles, anything that will support the agribusiness sector? I think this is a very interesting question we can't leave out.
Right. So Solidarity does not offer financial support. We are a non-governmental organization. What we have done as far as finance is concerned is financial inclusion. So we have helped individuals and groups that are interested in leveraging our training so that they can be seen to be de-risked and become more or less attractive to banks to invest in them. So if there are groups like that come together, then we are able to bring our access to finance team, the experience to bear, and now we prepare them to be attractive to banks. But we ourselves don't have the financial muscle to provide resources to individuals or even groups. There are several opportunities that are now emerging around green financing. And green, we talk about climate friendly, basically. Any intervention that does not impact heavily on the environment. So there are a lot of them. I would recommend that you start maybe doing some Google check on, Google search. If you don't find, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll link you up with some of our experts, and then they would mention to you or link you up to some of these sources so you can see if you can tap into that. Ultimately, if you're a group and you think that there's something you can do with Solidaridad, then please let us know. Even if we don't have the resources, we'll be able to work with you. If we have to even develop a proposal to go and look for funding opportunities to do that, we'll be happy to work with you. I know my own brother, Joseph Nuno, who is on the call, has that expertise, proposal development and things like that. He also provides a lot more support. So individuals are all over. And please, let's talk if need be, and then we'll be able to link you up.
That's amazing. So please, if you are here and you want to go into commercial big time farming and you need any technical support, Solidaridad says their doors are open. Please contact them. You can also contact us and we'll give you access to their office and any other information you may need on Solidaridad. Ladies and gentlemen, it's exactly 11 a.m. Our time is up. The last question I will ask, because the person is begging me. So the person is asking about what policies do you think we need for mechanizing agriculture? To him, he says it is important that if we are going to have sustainable agricultural practices, then mechanization is one of the sectors or is it the sectors I'm reading? Let me say sectors that we need to focus on. So
Yes.
please, yes.
He's right or she is right. We cannot negotiate that. It's 100% spot on. Mechanization, but you can only mechanize, as I said, when you have appreciable land sizes that are aggregated. Because you can't mechanize on half an acre or 1 acre. The investment wouldn't make sense. So we need land banks, serious land banks, so that if you are investing tractors or investing in any mechanization arrangement, then you know that because it also costs a lot of money, you should be able to recoup. Beyond mechanization, we also need deliberate effort on input. We don't have any clear strategy for input provision, okay? And that is an opportunity for investment. Anybody who wants to go into input, there's a huge opportunity. There have been some effort, but it still remains a lot of gap. Irrigation is also there. Mechanization, as I said, farm management services, particularly in the face of our aging farmer population. We need youth individuals who are able to make business out of farm management elsewhere it is working. Our own MFED Farms, Abner Mens, who is the chief executive, manages cocoa farms for cocoa farmers. They go with a lot of youth, they manage the farms, and then the farmers pay them with produce. Ultimately, it serves the needs of the farmers, for instance, because they're able to increase their yield, and it makes a lot of sense to them. So if you want to invest in farm management services, is the value addition along the entire value chain. Is the soil amendment. Soil amendment, I said the basics of agriculture, food and agriculture anywhere in the world is soil. So if we are losing soil due to degradation or infertility or erosion, now we need some investment in soil amendment. We need people with patient capital. Patient capital is money that can be invested in agriculture, and it doesn't need its interest today or tomorrow. It is able to wait for, let's say, 10 years. Maybe you belong to a family, you have huge fortune sitting somewhere. That is there. And Solidaridad has worked with such individuals and families to be able to make sense out of their patient capital. And ultimately, the monies are paid back to them, often with very little interest. Such funds or families, they don't need profit or too much interest. They just want to see that their money is actually changing lives. So all these are areas for investment, and we encourage that if you have the means, please explore that. It will serve you well.
Very well. Thank you so much. We couldn't have asked for more. Ladies and gentlemen, like icing on the cake, we have the Assistant Commissioner of the Ghana Revenue Authority with us, and he wants to share with us some incentives that are available for farming business. These are ways that we can encourage our farmers to go into business. So we bear with you, give us a few minutes, let him come share with us, because we must get the best out of our revenue. And if there's any support we can access, why not? Mr. Now, thank you so much for joining us. We are really looking forward to hearing all the incentives that are available to farming and agribusiness in Ghana.
Okay. Good morning to you all.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, all is well.
Yes.
Good. Can you hear me?
Clearly, yes, sir.
Oh, okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, thanks a lot for this package, and Declan, you are doing so well, trying to bring information to the doorstep of everyone, the business community, and all others who are interested. Indeed, from GRS perspective, there are a lot of incentives for our taxpayers. And today, I think the focus is on farming. Now, we would look at farming from two angles. That is tree crops, and then cattle and other livestock. Of course, we can also add cash crops. Now, what it is that then we have what we call general incentives, and then we have specific incentives, for farmers. Let me talk about the general incentives. All persons who incur losses, business losses, investment losses, are required to carry over their losses for 5 years. So I incur a loss today, I can carry it over for the next 5 years. If I'm unable to utilize the loss within the 5 years, then that ends the story. This for me is very, very lofty. It is good because at the end of the day, it is able to reduce the tax payable by the taxpayer. That is general. Now let's come to specifics. When it comes to specifics, now let's take cattle business. If you are into cattle business, the law says that the first 10 years of your operations, you pay tax rate of 5%. In fact, it was 1%, but it's now 5%. Now, one would ask about I'm paying tax. So where is the incentive? The corporate tax is 25%. If you are paying 5%, then it means that the rebate is 20%, which is very significant. And that is a tax expenditure to government, because that money, government cannot get it. So it is actually an incentive that is supposed to help promote the business enterprise of the taxpayer. Number two, if you are into livestock other than cattle and cash crops, you also have 5 years. So within the 5 years, you pay tax rate of 5%. That is also very, instructive to note. So the first 5 years, you are paying 5%. Now, your colleagues are paying 25%, you are paying 5%. So mouth-watering incentive of 20%. Now, we also have 3 crops. When it comes to 3 crops, we are looking at mango plantations and so on and so forth. Now, the law says that the first 10 years of harvest, not commencement, it may take some number of years before you start harvesting. So when you start harvesting, the first 10 years, you pay tax rate of 5%. That is also very instructive. That's also very, very instructive. Now, apart from that, we have what we call locational incentive for them. Locational incentive. Locational incentive has to do with where you are located. And if you look at our constitution, in fact, we are supposed to ensure balanced growth of the economy. So there are some incentives. Now it says that if you are into farming, is that okay? And you are located in Accra, Tema, after the period that you are supposed to pay 5%, you would pay tax rate of 20% if you are in Accra, Tema. So you can see that the incentive, which was 5%, you are now paying 20. There's still an incentive there because the corporate tax is 25%. If you are in regional capitals, outside the Northern Savannah ecological zones, you pay 50%. If you are in any other area outside the Northern Savannah ecological zones, you pay 10%. In the Northern Savannah ecological zones, you pay 5%. That is also an incentive, for them. Now, let me just say that I've spoken about the general carry of losses. I've also spoken about the specifics, which have to do with farming. Is that okay? Now, what we must note is that government considers this area, if you like, one of the growth pools of the country. So there's so much incentive in that area that one can go into. Now, let me just also hasten to add that in the case of cocoa farmers, if you're a cocoa farmer and you earn income in from cocoa farming, indefinitely you don't pay tax at all. So there's an incentive for cocoa farmers. Even though they are also part of the tree crops, cocoa farmers have been isolated and given special treatment. They will not pay tax indefinitely. Now, for now, that's what the law is, unless maybe there's a change in future. And we do know that you are a lawyer and you know that you would always advocate for change in some laws. But for the time being, these are some of the incentives that we can talk about. Yeah, there are many others. If you employ fresh graduates, you have some benefits that you will get and all those things. But I wouldn't want to bore you. I just want to look at the specific, one for the sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Whilst you are speaking, someone quickly texted. Please ask him, do we have tax incentives or waivers for inputs? I think import of inputs, yes.
Yeah, so yeah, when it comes to agro products, when you import anything, we have what we call some rebates. Is that okay? We have some rebates. So that is also there, just to encourage, the farming, business. Is that okay? So I can say largely, we have a lot of incentives that are there, but you just need to ask the right questions and then you get the right answers.
Absolutely. Our time is up. Mr. Ment, quickly ask your question, the last question for the day, and then we are gone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nab. Very grateful for your time, and Mr. Bosman too. Please, I deliver services in the cocoa sector, so I haven't established cocoa farm myself, but we manage cocoa farms for the old age, sick, and absentee farmers. Yes, I've had these challenges with the GRA in my end, but still they don't understand me that so long as we manage, it is a service of value addition, we have to pay the tax. Even I didn't know of these 5% that Mr. Nabi talked of. So please, thank you so much. I'm very happy if we can get your contact so that you assist us in some of these things, because sometimes it's very discouraging when they come and close your office and other sort of things. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. But let me quickly react to that. When it comes to management of a sector, the question we are asking is that you are not actually the person in the theater of action. You are only managing. Are you receiving income for the management? If you are receiving income for the management, you are not really the direct beneficiary of the incentive that we are talking about. But of course, we can have discussions and look at the way forward.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to tell you, I think you need a lawyer rather. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for spending the time with us this morning. We've learned a lot of new things today, and we are happy. Thank you for Mr. Bosman spending the time giving us all this juicy information. Mr. Nab, thank you for helping businesses understand that there are some opportunities for us tax-wise. Please, if you have further questions, you still have our numbers. Keep asking. We will get the information for you. And yes, we are going to be back next month with another nice educative session. Thank you very much. We ask you to enjoy the rest of your day. See you next month.
Thank you for organizing this. I really appreciate that. Bye-bye.
Thank you. We love you.
I love you too.
Sorry, how do we get to know? Some of us just saw it on people's status and joined. How do we get in touch?
Yeah.
I don't. There's a WhatsApp number in the chat section. If you could find it, give us a text. We'll
No,
put
I'm in
you
the
on.
chat session right now. I've not seen it.
Okay, let
If
me.
you can just put it there quickly, then I can
Yes,
copy
let me
it.
do that. Let me do that right away. Yeah, so the WhatsApp number or the email address will get your contact.
Okay.
And thank you for all those who keep sharing. Thank you for putting this. Let's keep spreading information to as far as possible. We need to help each other in Ghana. Thank you all very much. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.